Coming to this university and to this city has always felt a bit like coming home to me. Firstly, because my father's family came from this part of Scotland.
Coming to this university and to this city has always felt a bit like coming home to me. Firstly, because my father's family came from this part of Scotland. What happened when Camilla publicly humiliated children during a royal visit shocked everyone. But King Charles's immediate response changed everything. As of today, it is widely believed that the stage Camilla had fought so hard to claim was beginning to slip from her grasp. Her role as queen consort had long been controversial, criticized by senior royals, including Princess Anne and Prince William. An openly argued Camilla should never be called queen due to her past affair with King Charles during his marriage to Diana. William, protecting his children, refused to allow them to see Camilla as family. Even the late queen reportedly had reservations, though Camilla maintained public composure for years. We actually tried to keep quiet about reaching 3/4 of a century. Quiet tensions endured until one defining moment signaled the end of her reign. How did it happen? Let's unpack and bring it all together. This moment came to pass on December 20th, 2025. For much of the world, it was the season of Christmas, a time to celebrate family, love, and joy. For the royal household, however, this Christmas held a more solemn purpose. It was a season to reach out to those who were often overlooked, to bring comfort to those who were in pain, to acknowledge those who could not celebrate in the usual way. King Charles, weakened by a recent cancer diagnosis, had issued an official memo to all senior working royals. It clearly outlined their roles for the holiday season. They were to spend Christmas visiting orphanages, hospitals, nursing homes, children's hospices, and other places where care, attention, and human kindness were desperately needed. The visits were to be quiet, intimate, and unobtrusive. There was to be no fanfare, no spectacle, only the sincerity of connection. But knowing royal life, nothing is ever quiet. Secondly, because my husband and I are lucky enough to spend precious time each year in Aberdeen. The planning of these visits fell to Princess Anne, a figure renowned within the royal family for her meticulous organization, unwavering attention to detail, and precise execution. She took on the responsibility with characteristic diligence, using her decades of experience. She drew up a detailed schedule, assigning each member of the royal family to specific locations, precise times, and carefully orchestrated interactions. Her goal was not just to maintain order, but to ensure that each visit carried genuine impact, and understood that the royals were not merely symbols. Their actions could bring real hope and joy to those in need. So both Princess and Camilla, as queen consort, were paired with Princess Catherine to visit an orphanage and a children's hospital. The locations were carefully selected, chosen not at random, but because of their unique needs and the opportunity they offered for meaningful interaction. I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction, and poor mental health. Prince William, meanwhile, was assigned to visit a children's hospice and a military hospital, spaces where he could engage with families, veterans, and children, providing comfort and understanding in a way uniquely suited to him. Other royals were assigned to additional hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and community homes. Each choice made with care and foresight. The plan was extensive and exacting. Every detail was considered. The timing of arrivals, the flow of movement through each room, the words to be spoken to patients, the small gifts to be given, even the tone of voice expected to convey warmth and compassion. Buckingham Palace staff were instructed to ensure that nothing disrupted the delicate choreography of the day. The entire household bristled with anticipation, quietly proud of the precision and care with which the plans had been laid. December 24th and 26th were set as the official days for Anne, Camilla, and Catherine to visit the orphanage and hospital. Everything seemed perfectly arranged. The palace corridors buzzed softly with preparation. Having been lucky enough to meet some of our country's amazing charities and organizations, staff moving in careful synchronization, Camilla arrived on the morning of the first visit, poised and elegant, radiating the dignity of her office. Catherine followed with her own natural warmth, her presence calming both children and staff. Princess Anne oversaw the final checks, ensuring that each element of the schedule aligned with her expectations. The day began as planned. The orphanage greeted them with eager smiles, and the children's laughter filled the corridors. Catherine engaged naturally, kneeling to speak with the children, while Camilla followed with measured grace. And observed quietly from a short distance, noting every detail, every interaction, ready to intervene if necessary. It was a moment of potential joy, a demonstration of care and kindness from the royal family. And yet, despite the careful planning, despite the precision and preparation, the day held a turning point that would really surprise you. Fortunate that His Majesty has allowed us to use Buckingham Palace for this event. And as they moved through the orphanage, something caught Catherine's attention. A small figure remained in one of the slightly open rooms, completely still, staring out the window. Every other child ran toward them, bubbling with joy at the sight of the royals, their laughter filling the hallways, their excitement almost palpable. But this little girl stayed where she was, frozen in the corner, seemingly oblivious to the commotion around her. Catherine leaned slightly toward Anne and Camilla, silently signaling. Anne's sharp eyes immediately understood the girl needed attention. Without hesitation, she moved quickly toward the room, weaving carefully past the few TV cameras documenting the event live. Camilla remained where she was, hesitant, her expression tight. Catherine stepped forward, concerned by her composure. Mental health is best supported and all those around children and raising the next generation today. When Camilla did not respond, Catherine moved closer, whispering softly to her, "Come on, there's a child there. She needs us." Camilla, now catching the situation, peeped into the room where Anne had already reached the girl. She straightened, a flicker of indignation crossing her face. "You don't expect me," she said sharply, her voice low but firm. "Queen consort, to set my foot on such a dirty place. You must really be testing me. I am a senior royal, a queen. You should respect that." Catherine's eyes widened, taken aback by the harshness. "This isn't about protocol," she whispered back. "It's about her, the child. Just come. She needs your warmth." Anne intervened, her tone calm but unyielding. "Camilla, this isn't about status. It's about kindness. Step in now." Yet Camilla did not move despite the camera that was recording everything live. By the time the conversation ended, and guided Catherine gently out of the room, their whispered words barely audible over the soft hum of the cameras. "Don't you know there are cameras televising this moment?" Anne asked, her voice low but urgent. "What will they say of us if they see us arguing in front of these children?" Catherine shook her head, exhaling softly. "Just about happy, healthy children. This is about the society I hope we could and can become. It doesn't matter, Anne. Right now, it's about her. That's all that matters." And gave a small approving nod. Together, they re-entered the room and approached the girl, her hand tapping lightly on the child's back. "Hello, princess," she said quietly, gently. The girl slowly turned, and in that moment, the sight took both Catherine and Anne by surprise. Her face was marked by burns, deep scars that had clearly healed over painfully, but left visible reminders of her trauma. The girl's eyes were wide, wary. Catherine crouched to meet her gaze. "Hello there," she said softly. "What's your name?" "Pearl," the girl whispered. Her voice was fragile, carrying the weight of months of fear and loneliness. Anne's heart clenched. "Pearl," she said gently, offering a reassuring smile. "You're safe now. I promise you're going to be okay. We here with you." So, I've grown to appreciate just the quality of the racing at Ascot as well as the Pearl's voice trembled as she asked almost matter-of-factly, "When is Mommy coming back?" Catherine exchanged a glance with Anne, their expressions somber. "Pearl, can you tell me what happened?" Anne asked carefully, crouching closer, trying to offer comfort. Pearl hesitated, then her voice cracked. "There was a fire. My brother and sister and Mommy, they got caught. And then they were gone. I stayed in the hospital for months, but the burns, they are still fresh." Her small hand touched her cheek lightly, as though remembering the pain. She continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "When the robbers came, they shot my daddy. Mommy said he went to heaven and would come back, but I haven't seen him. And now they tell me Mommy, Vivian, and Maxwell will come back, but it's been 3 months. They don't want to play with me. They say I'm a monster." Pearl pointed at the other children in the room, her eyes welling with tears. Anne's voice softened as she reached out a hand. "Pearl, you're not a monster. You're brave and you're not alone anymore. I'm here. Catherine's here, and we're going to help you." Pearl blinked, trying to process the warmth in Anne's words. "Really?" she asked quietly, her voice a mixture of doubt and hope. "But by offering those continuation funding to most successful past winners." "Really?" Anne said gently, guiding her toward the door. "You are safe now, Pearl. You're a princess, and princesses are never alone. You are loved, and people care for you." As they stepped out, Pearl glanced back at the room where the other children had been playing. She had been isolated for so long, but for the first time in months, she felt someone seeing her. Not the burned face, not the trauma, not the loss, but her as a child who deserved care, kindness, and protection. And carried Pearl's small hand as they walked through the hallways, Catherine quietly by their side. The cameras captured the moment. Yes, but in their own minds, the royals focused on something far more important. The healing of a small, fragile life. And whispered again, reassuring her, reminding her that she was strong, that she had survived horrors that no child should ever know. By the time they returned to the group of children outside the room, Pearl's steps were steadier. The other children paused, noticing her presence. She no longer seemed like the frightened, withdrawn girl from before. She was part of something bigger, surrounded by people who cared. And though the scars on her face remained, Anne and Catherine both saw in her eyes a spark of life, of hope that had not been there before. And bent down once more to represent the former onto Powers as we remember the service and sacrifice. "Pearl," she said softly, "you're going to be okay. We're going to help you and you're going to play, laugh, and feel safe again. I promise." Pearl looked up at her, small tears running down her cheeks, but a tiny smile breaking through. It was the first sign of trust, the first sign of comfort she had allowed herself in months. And held her hand a moment longer, whispering, "You are not alone. You are not forgotten, and you are loved." As they walked back toward the main hall, Pearl between them, Catherine and Anne exchanged a glance. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the enormity of the moment, the pain they had witnessed, the resilience they had seen, and the simple truth that sometimes presence and kindness mattered more than protocol or status. For Pearl, the small gestures of care had begun to untangle the weight of her trauma. For the royals, the experience was a stark reminder that the crown, the titles, and the status meant little in the face of human suffering. Opened the East Stand when it was built at about 2 weeks' notice cause they've been let down. And in that quiet, emotional moment, the distance between the palace and the children's world seemed to shrink just a little as love and compassion filled the space that had once held only Faye. But it did not end there. In fact, it got worse. As they reached the main hall, Camilla adjusted her posture, signaling that it was time for her to give the prepared speech. The event was drawing to a close. Yet, she seemed visibly impatient. "That is, yes, I do." How riveting. "So, you talk to a lot of people." The royals had been at the orphanage for nearly an hour, and she wanted to leave. And, still holding Pearl's small hand, gently handed the girl over to Catherine, whispering a few words of reassurance. Pearl's tiny fingers clung to Catherine's hand, her trust now slowly forming after the morning's emotional encounters. Turning to Camilla, Anne's voice was firm. "What's the meaning of this? You can't just rush through. There are children here who need attention, not just words." Camilla's expression tightened. "The place. It stinks. The children are crying. The halls smell. I can't stay here any longer. I wasn't made to linger in such conditions." Anne's eyes narrowed. "That's no excuse. You're meant to lead by example. And even if you wanted to leave, you should never have started the speech while I'm here. Protocol and respect demanded. You are senior royal. Yes, but responsibility comes with it. Please act like it." Camilla's lips curled in irritation. "Who put you in charge? Besides, I'm the queen consort, not you. I hold the title. You are not in charge, hey. I'm completely hopeless that I was a really bad actor at school." And the cameras remained fixed on the scene, capturing every tense exchange. And kept her composure, careful to contain the situation before it spiraled. With a quiet sigh, she gestured to the staff, subtly signaling them to carry on with the event. Camilla eventually gave a brief hurried address, attempting to cover her obligation. Catherine, meanwhile, knelt among the children, playing with them and sharing warm words, while Pearl stayed in and protective hold the entire time, her small face slowly lighting up amidst the care and attention. 40 minutes later, at exactly 2:30, Camilla took the microphone again. This time, and did not object, though the tension in the room was palpable. The words that came out sent a shock through everyone present. "Thank you, I suppose," Camilla began, her tone dripping with thinly veiled disdain. "It is certainly something to be here in these conditions. One must admire the resilience of these children, trying to make sense of such untidiness and disorder. I see little faces trying to smile amid chaos, though I imagine some of you might smell the less than pleasant air of this place. Truly, It takes patience to endure this environment day after day. A few adults shifted uncomfortably. Some children looked confused. Catherine's hand instinctively moved to comfort Pearl, who clutched her sleeve. "And I must ask," Camilla continued, glancing at Anne and Catherine, "how exactly do you both manage to supervise such a place? Surely it requires skill, something that perhaps not everyone can claim. One would think experience and competence might be required, though I see only effort." The head of the orphanage, Mrs. Smith, stared in disbelief, clutching the ceremonial check Camilla had brought. Her lips parted, but no words came. The remarks were sharp, mocking both the children and the royals tasked with caring for them. When Camilla finally handed the check to Mrs. Smith, it almost felt incidental. The sting of her words lingered in the room, and the staff and children were left silent, unsure of how to respond. Anne stepped forward with calm authority, taking the microphone. Her voice carried both dignity and warmth. "Ladies and gentlemen, children," and began, her eyes sweeping the room. "We are here today to recognize courage, not to mock it. These children have endured circumstances no one should face, and yet they remain hopeful, resilient, and full of potential. The care provided by the staff and the love shown by every helper here deserves respect and appreciation." She turned to Pearl, kneeling so she was at eye level with the small girl. "Pearl, you are not alone. You are seen. You are valued. And you are loved. All the children here are part of a family that cares for them, a community that welcomes them. We must remember their dignity and celebrate their strength, not belittle it." Anne's voice softened even further, addressing the other children and their guardians. "Let's make sure Pearl feels safe, welcome, and part of this group. She has shown immense bravery, and today we honor her story and the stories of all of you." Pearl's small eyes glistened with tears. "I had to give you a go-ahead. You did. You did a very good job. It's brand new. Brand new. Yes." As she listened, the elder children around her began to shed theirs, too. Touched by her courage and the recognition she was finally receiving, Catherine gently held Pearl's hand, kneeling to reassure her. "We will return," Catherine promised softly, "and will make sure every one of you knows you are important and loved." By the time the royals left, the atmosphere had transformed. Where tension and insult had lingered moments before, warmth and connection now filled the hall. Pearl, once isolated, was slowly embraced by the elder children. Laughter returned in tentative bursts, and the first fragile threads of friendship began to form. And this was the part no one wanted to miss. Back home, the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace was tense, almost unbearable. What had happened at the orphanage did not stay within its walls. Within hours, the story had escaped into the world, and the media seized it eagerly. Some outlets focused on the tenderness of the moment between Princess and Catherine and Pearl. The quiet compassion, the comforting words, the image of and holding the burned child's hand. Those clips painted a picture of humanity and care. But other outlets chose a different angle. They replayed Camilla's speech again and again, slowing it down, analyzing every word, every expression. In a world where bad news travels faster than good, the mocking tone, the comments about dote and smell, and the implied insults overshadow everything else. The kindness shown to Pearl was pushed aside, buried beneath outrage and criticism. Social media exploded on X, formerly Twitter. Users wasted no time sharing their views. The hashtag #Respect the Children began trending within hours, spreading across continents. One user wrote, "Those children didn't choose their circumstances. A crown doesn't give anyone the right to mock suffering. Respect the children." Another posted, "Princess," and showed what leadership looks like today. Compassion over ego. The rest was shameful. A third comment went viral almost instantly. "If this is what royalty thinks of vulnerable children, maybe it's time they stop pretending to care." Inside Buckingham Palace, it felt like war. Advisors rushed from room to room. Phones pressed to their ears, trying desperately to contain the damage. Public relations teams argued over wording, over timing, over whether silence or apology would do less harm. Every option seemed wrong. No official statement was released. The palace struggled to protect its image, its mission, its carefully maintained public face, and the redesign by Hugh Broughton architects. But the cracks were becoming impossible to hide. By nightfall, internal reports confirmed the damage. Approval ratings had dropped by 15% in less than 12 hours. It was unprecedented. Never before had a single visit caused such a sharp decline. Worse still, the palace had received no clear path forward. The silence only fueled speculation, and speculation hardened into public anger. Then came the shock. The following morning, a formal letter arrived at Buckingham Palace marked urgent. It was from the director of St. Joseph's Hospital. The hospital Camilla and Catherine were scheduled to visit on December 26th. The wording was polite, measured, and devastating. The director explained that given the recent media attention and public reaction, he did not believe it was the right time for a royal visit. The hospital's priority, he said, was to protect its patients, staff, and reputation. It was a refusal. No one had ever said no to the royal household before. Not like this, not openly, not in writing. The letter was passed from hand to hand in stunned silence. This was not just a blow. It was an insult, a public rejection that spoke louder than any headline. The implications were severe. If one institution could refuse a royal visit, others might follow. The authority of the crown, once unquestioned, now seemed fragile. And that was when King Charles heard of it. The news reached him in the quiet of the morning as he sat with his medical advisors already weakened from treatment. The approval drop, the viral outrage, the hospital's refusal. Each detail landed heavily. His face hardened as the full weight of the situation became clear. This was no longer about one speech or one visit. It was about the integrity of the monarchy itself. For the first time since the incident, the palace understood something crucial. What had happened at the orphanage was not a moment that would fade. It was a turning point, and what came next was not handled quietly. Keep watching for more. King Charles did not waste time. The moment the full report was laid before him, he summoned his son, Prince William, and Princess into his private study. When they arrived, the atmosphere was heavy, the silence filled with unspoken understanding. This was not a meeting for debate or delay. Before either of them could speak, the king broke the silence. "Anne," he said quietly, his voice steady, but weighed with regret. "I owe you an apology. What happened was unacceptable. You were insulted while carrying out your duty, and that should never have been allowed to happen under my watch." Anne inclined her head slightly, her expression composed. She accepted the apology without words, understanding the weight behind it. Charles then turned to both of them, his expression firm, resolute. "I will act immediately," he said. "The title of Queen Consort will be stripped effective today." There were no gasps, no objections, no attempts to soften the decision. William and Anne exchanged brief glances, then nodded in agreement. They did not ask how he planned to carry it out, nor did they suggest alternatives. They knew this was not a moment for negotiation. They trusted that the king would do what was right, not just for the crown, but for the values it claimed to represent. They rose, paid their respects, and left the room quietly. Moments later, Charles summoned his communications and social media manager. There was no hesitation, no prolonged discussion. In a sensible world, want to hand on an increasingly dysfunctional. An official statement was drafted, reviewed once, and released immediately across all royal platforms. It read, "Following the recent events and the conduct displayed during a charitable visit, it has become necessary to clarify the values of the crown. Compassion, humility, and respect, especially toward the vulnerable, are the foundations of our service. Any behavior that contradicts these principles, regardless of status, is unacceptable. Effective immediately, the title bestowed upon my wife has been withdrawn. While she remains my wife and will continue to reside within the palace, she will no longer hold royal duties or privileges. I offer my deepest apologies to the children, staff, and institutions affected, King Charles III." But the king did not stop there. That same day, Charles personally called the medical director of St. Joseph's Hospital. There were no aides on the line, no prepared script. He spoke not as a monarch, but as a father and a man who understood the weight of disappointment. He listened carefully, acknowledged the harm caused, and took full responsibility. His voice carried sincerity, not authority. By the end of the call, the hospital agreed to reinstate the visit. Within hours, the news spread across the world. Headlines praised the king's decisiveness. Commentators spoke of dignity, accountability, and long overdue boundaries. Online reactions flooded in. "This is leadership." One user commented, "Accountability at the highest level." Finally, another said, "The crown chose humanity over image." The following day, Princess Anne and Catherine arrived at St. Joseph's Hospital as planned. Cameras captured quiet moments. Hands held, words exchanged, smiles returned. The children laughed, families felt seen. The visit was everything the crown had hoped to represent. There was no sign of Camilla because when someone plays carelessly with a stage given to them, that stage, no matter how grand, eventually goes away. And that is something that Camilla would learn the hard way. So, what do you think? Could the royal family have handled Camilla's situation any differently? And what does this moment reveal about accountability and privilege in today's monarchy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them.